And welcome to Nats Chat for Friday, May 3rd, 2024. Along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The Texas Rangers, they were the Washington Senators from 1961 through 1971. Those Senators teams, as you probably know, were, for the most part, quite bad. And unfortunately, the Nationals offense in this three-game series at the Rangers this week was Senators-like. Thursday afternoon, a 6-0 loss at the Rangers. This off a 7-1 loss on Tuesday night and a 1-0 win on Wednesday night. So the Nats in this series scored a total of 2 runs. The Nats for this regular season now are 15-16. This episode of the Nats Chat podcast is brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can call Table to Mat directly through the website at tabletomat.com. To the DMV area, you can email Table to Mat directly through the website at tabletomat.com. You can call Table to Mat at 240-388-2206. And that website is tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. Mark, the Nats in their 4-game sweep at the Miami Marlins scored 30 runs over the final 3 games. The Nats, in losing 2 of 3 games at the Rangers, scored just the 2 runs over the 3 games. You know, you think about it, it's actually impressive that the Nats scored just 2 runs over the 3 games in this series and did not get swept. That the Nats won a game is actually something in which you can perhaps take some solace.
Yeah, 100%. I think this would be a very different conversation today if they had not pulled off that really impressive 1-0 victory on Wednesday night. But I think this is why we said at the end of the Marlins series, you got to be careful not to read too much into that, given who the opponent was. And I think maybe on the flip side of that, hopefully don't want to read too much into this one. You want to believe that maybe facing the defending World Series champs who got some outstanding pitching in this series, that's not necessarily an indication really of where the Nats are. If this is where they are offensively, this is going to be a problem going on for a while. Clearly, they are struggling right now. But I think you have to step back and try to view this in a broader sense and try to figure out where things stand at the moment. There are issues, no doubt about it. They have several guys in like prolonged slumps at the same time. You have others who are injured and not here, and I think we're starting to see the effects of that. And the end result of all that is a team that right now it is a chore for them to score a run, and that was really on display in the series.
I think what is tough to discern is, are the Nats actually a decent offensive team that just does offense in an unconventional way? You know, pesky, singles, this season drawing some walks, get on base, utilize the running game, etc. Or are the Nats a bad offensive team? And that when we look at those things that we just listed there, we're kind of just trying to figure out something nice to say, but like bottom line, this isn't a good offensive team. I think that's still to be determined. At times, this has seemed like a decent offensive team. The Nats have had some good run totals this season, and we've seen them get to pitchers, and we've seen them put up crooked numbers, and we've seen them do things offensively to where you feel halfway decent about the team offensively, even with the reality of this not being a home run hitting team once again. But as we've talked about with that methodology of offense, it's hard to sustain that over the course of a season. And so I suppose even if the Nats are a decent offensive team, they're going to have series like this because it's hard game in, game out to get a bunch of people on base, to wreak havoc on the base paths. And I tell you one thing that really stood out of this series with the Nats not hitting, when they don't have a running game, that really takes their legs out from under them. No pun intended. That is such a huge component of what they do well offensively this season so far. And so when you don't have that, it really is glaring.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say is if you look at when they've been successful, there have been a lot of base runners over the course of the game. They have not been great at driving in runners in scoring position. We've mentioned that. That's been an issue for them over the course of the year. But when you have as many guys on base as they have had most nights, I would say, it at least gives you these opportunities to use your athleticism and speed to manufacture runs, to steal bases, to bunt guys over, to drive them in, sacrifice flies, ground balls that move runners up, all that kind of stuff. But if you're not even putting yourself in a position for that, now you're relying on big hits to score runs, home runs and doubles and triples, and that they are much more in short supply on. So I think that's where you're really seeing it is they can't win games that have, score runs in bunches with a couple of big swings. It requires some momentum, a combination of getting on base, advancing once you're on base, and then hopefully driving them in. And in Miami, they did that. They had plenty of guys on base. In this series, they just didn't even have the opportunities. How many stolen bases attempts they have? Only a couple the entire series.
Yeah, and another thing with that series of the Marlins were co-conspirators. I mean, you saw errors, you saw hit by pitches. I mean, the Marlins were assisting the Nats in doing well offensively. That's not to say that the Nats weren't good offensively in that series, but the opposition played a role in that. You did not have nearly as much of the help from the opposing team in this series. So specific to Thursday afternoon, the Nats scored no runs, totaled just 4 hits, did work 3 walks, but went 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position, just 2 at-bats with runners in scoring position the entire game. The Nats struck out 12 times. The Rangers starting pitcher, Nathan Eovaldi, now it is age 34 season, but still going strong. He tossed 5 1/3 scoreless innings with 8 strikeouts. The Nats' 4 hits were made up of 2 doubles and 2 singles, and 2 doubles coming from C.J. Abrams and Luis Garcia Jr. Abrams as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, top of the 3rd, 2 at first pitch double into right center field. Garcia as the Nats starting second baseman and number 3 batter. He in the top of the 1st had a 2-out opposite field double to left center field. 2 of the 3 walks came from Nick Senzel. He is the Nats starting DH and number 2 batter, 0 for 2 with 2 walks and 2 strikeouts. But that was about it in terms of anything notably positive from the Nats offense. Jesse Winker, starting left fielder, number 5 batter, 0 for 4, concluding a series in which he went 0 for 11. Winker has cooled off quite a bit since his hot start. And, not to keep making this guy a punching bag, but what is happening with Eddie Rosario is really tough to watch. Starting left fielder, number 7 batter, 0 for 2, 2 strikeouts. His OPS for this regular season down to 290. I thought something that was especially telling during Davey Martinez's post-game session with you guys, he's super late in the session, gets asked about, potential lineup changes or doing something to shake things up in the middle of the order. And he essentially said, do what? He kind of threw up his hands up. There's not much that I can do here. Guys just need to start hitting.
And I agree with him. I mean, I'm hearing it from fans all over the place. Like, how long are they going to keep sticking with this guy and that guy? When are they going to give up on this one, that one? I had people, ultimately asking for like 8 players to be either demoted or DFA'd. Okay, that's fine, but who are you replacing them with? Okay. The guys on the bench for this game are Riley Adams, who's in a slump himself after going through a nice stretch. Trey Lipscomb, who's been okay since coming back up, but it's not like he sets the world on fire. Nasim Nunez, the Rule 5 pick who never plays, and the reason for that is because he doesn't hit hardly at all. And Alex Call, who did come off the bench to replace Rosario when they had a lefty-righty matchup later in the game. That's it. There's one guy I can think of at AAA who could make any kind of significant difference in James Wood, and we don't know for sure what he would be or what he would do. I think you have to be careful not to make those kind of moves as a reaction to what's happening at the big league level. You have to make that move when you're convinced that he himself is ready for this. The other guys they have at AAA are, maybe they would do something, help you out a little bit, but like Juan Yepes and Travis Blankenhorn, I mean, these are guys with some big league experience, but they're not part of the long-term plan. These aren't guaranteed injectors of life into a lineup. So, I mean, I don't know there is a whole lot here that Davey can do. What stood out to me, I think we're realizing how much they miss some of these injured players, especially Lane Thomas. I understand that he was off to a slow start and he wasn't producing for them a lot, but he is somewhat of a proven bat over the last couple of years. And just putting him in that lineup moves everybody else down a notch. I think you're really seeing how much they miss him, and it's going to be a while until he comes back. We know because of the MCL sprain. I think that is very noticeable, and in this series, I think we really saw it for the first time.
I think the other thing too, and I mentioned this with Winker, but for a while the Nats had 4 guys who were going quite well, in C.J. Abrams, Jesse Winker, Riley Adams, and Luis Garcia Jr. And all 4 guys now have cooled off, including Abrams. And look, Abrams is not going to slug 700 this season, right? I mean, the numbers were going to come down. but he has not been as good lately as he had been. And nobody else is emerging. Like, I think that's what's part of the problem here. It wasn't going to be all year that Abrams, Winker, Garcia, and Adams were carrying you. Like, you needed other guys to step up, as the phrase goes. Nobody's stepping up. People are stepping down, but nobody's stepping up. And so while those four guys have cooled off, everyone else has remained the same, which is mediocre to poor. And that's a problem. I mean, we know how the 162 goes. Guys get hot, guys cool off, etc. There aren't other people getting hot here. And that's a big part of the issue, I think.
Right. You should always have at least two guys that are hitting well in any given moment, and they can get the job done for you. And at the moment, no, they don't have that. I think Garcia's kind of been pretty consistent, certainly by his standard. So I think he's one that you are pretty pleased with. But I mean, here to me are the two that really stand out. It's Joey Meneses, who had a couple of nice games there, and you thought, okay, maybe he's finally getting it going. Well, he's right back into the rut again. He's now 2 for his last 21. Still does not have a home run yet this year, and does come up with runners in scoring position and has not recaptured that, at least not on a consistent basis. And Keibert Ruiz, I understand he was sick, he missed time, and maybe it was going to be a while till he got himself going again. He is now in a 2 for 33 slump, and one of those hits came in the 7th inning of this game. He was 1 for 31 prior to that at bat. That's really not cutting it for a guy who is supposed to be a big part of what they're doing here. Now, again, he was sick, he lost the weight. The whole season was kind of disrupted for him. So you give a little bit of a pass there, but he's going to need to figure this out kind of soon. He is a guy they cannot afford to go into any kind of prolonged slump like that because he is a big part of the team. Rosario, yeah, it's been awful, but it's not like he was ever expected to carry this lineup. And Winker, after a great start, like you said, it's cooled off. He's 4 for his last 36. But let's be realistic. What did we really think Jesse Winker was going to be for this team? So to me, Ruiz and Meneses right now are the two that I'm really focusing on.
Going to be really interesting with this Nats schedule. The Nats are in the midst of playing all of these American League teams, which is so bizarre, but that's the way that the schedule is now. Facing some decent pitching coming up this weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays at Nationals Park. You think about Yusei Kikuchi, you think about Kevin Gausman. And then the Nats have that 2-game series against the Orioles at Nationals Park next week. And as things stand now, and nothing's definite, but the starting pitchers for the O's in that series would be Corbin Burnes and Kyle Bradish, who just came off the 15-day injured list. Burnes, of course, has been one of the best starting pitchers in baseball the last few years. And Bradish was excellent last season and just came back actually on Thursday afternoon, made his 2024 Major League regular season debut off having been out with a right UCL sprain. Well, the Nats starting pitcher in this 6-0 loss at the Rangers on Thursday afternoon was Mitchell Parker. 3 runs in 5 1/3 innings. He gave up 6 hits, which were 2 doubles and 4 singles. He issued 2 walks into wild pitch. He did have 5 strikeouts. He did throw a lot of strikes, 83 pitches, 56 strikes versus 27 balls. All 3 of the runs that Parker allowed came in the bottom of the second, during which he allowed 3 runs on a double, 3 singles, and a walk. Now, one of the singles was a 2-out RBI infield single by the Rangers' number 9 batter, Evan Carter, on a hot shot grounder that went off first baseman Joey Meneses. Although the ball had an exit velocity of 106.3 miles per hour. However, you, during the Davey Martinez post-game session with reporters, asked Davey about that play, and I was surprised by Davey's answer. He said that he felt that Meneses should have made that play.
Yeah, so watching it live, I did think, oh boy, that's a play you'd like to make. Then I saw the exit velocity too and said, all right, that's not the easiest play in the world coming at you that hot. And what struck me was that Davey, in just talking about Mitchell Parker before there was a question about that, said, I thought he, in my mind, he only gave up 1 run. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, he actually gave up 3, so why are you saying only 1? And I thought, well, is he trying to suggest that the inning should have been over if Meneses makes that play? So that's why I asked him, and he said, yeah. I think this is the fascinating part of defense in the big leagues. It goes down as a hit. It should be a hit, but it's a play that could have been made. And you'd like to think that a good first baseman can make that play and bail out your pitcher and help him out. So I don't think you can get too down on Meneses for not making that play. But on a day when they needed everything to go right, it would have been really nice to make that play and help out Parker and help his final line look a whole lot better. We know Meneses' defense is not going to be his strong suit. I don't know if Joey Gallo makes that play or not. I don't know if Dom Smith makes that play or not. But it was one of those gray area, like, yes, hot shot, deserves to be ruled as a hit, but it's a play that could have been made and wasn't.
It's interesting. I think if you ask most people, have the Nats played good defense this season? I think most people probably would say yes. The Nats, though, came into Thursday 26 out of 30 major league teams in defensive runs saved for the regular season. Now, defensive runs saved is not gospel, and I think most people in baseball will tell you got to be careful with the publicly available defensive metrics because a lot of teams use proprietary metrics because the publicly available metrics aren't necessarily the best. But that does stand out that the defense, once again, is not rating well. It feels like every year we talk about the defense maybe being better, hopefully being better, and yet the advanced metrics are almost like never kind to the Nats defense. So something there. Yeah, I mean, I think when you give up a ball with an exit velocity of more than 106 miles per hour, I don't know. I think there's only so much that you can blame on the defense for that one. But, I don't think Parker was that bad. And you take a step back and you look at Mitchell Parker now, 4 starts since the Nats recalled him from AAA Rochester on April 15th. His ERA is 2.53. His whip is 1.08. And that which had plagued him in the minors, the walk, is not plaguing him. He has 19 strikeouts versus 4 walks. Now, he over his 4 starts has only totaled 21 and a third innings. So you say, all right, the workload hasn't been gargantuan. But geez, 4 starts, ERA at 2.53, 19 Ks, 4 walks. Mitchell Parker, a guy, who was not some highly touted prospect. I think you have to be pleased with what the Nats are getting from this guy.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he went into the 6th inning in this one. He completed 7 innings in the game against the Astros. The 4-inning one against the Marlins kind of skewered those numbers somewhat. But yeah, you look at this and say, okay, if this is the kind of game that you can typically expect out of Mitchell Parker, I think most people would take that. I don't think anybody realistically looked at him and said, oh, wow, what he was for those first 2 games, this is who he's going to be for his career. He's going to be the new ace of the team. I think they all realistically know that deep down that's not who he is. But if he can consistently get you 5 innings, get into the 6th at times, and hold you to 3 runs or less, which is what he's done now in every single start, and throw strikes, that's a huge win for them as an organization, for somebody who was not expected to be here at this point. And I think we all had the same concerns going into that debut at Dodger Stadium. Like, oh man, this kid could get lit up and this could get really ugly. And it was the exact opposite of that. So if this is him at his worst, 3 runs and 5 and a third, and it could have been only 1 run if a play's made behind him, I think everybody absolutely has to take that and be thrilled with it.
The Nats bullpen on Thursday afternoon, 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 3 runs in 2 2/3 innings. Jacob Barnes faced 2 batters, got 2 outs. Jordan Weems, a perfect bottom of the 7th, but Matt Barnes allowed 3 runs in the bottom of the 8th. That's the thing. 6-0 kind of feels like a blowout score, and I guess that it is. But this was a close game. This was a very winnable game.
Right. It's 3-0 most of the way, and all 3 of those runs, like we said, came in the 1 inning. It felt like they were 1 rally away from having a chance, and then Matt Barnes comes in and turned it into, kind of a guaranteed outcome at that point. We talked about Tanner Rainey being clearly the lowest man on the totem pole in the bullpen. I think Matt Barnes is clearly the 2nd lowest on that. Maybe he gets it back together. This is a guy with experience. He's closed games for the Red Sox. He's had a few moments here so far, but he's also had, probably outside of Rainey, the most blow-ups that we've seen to date. And so, that's why he's the one pitching the 8th inning down 3 runs. You'd love for him to keep it close. He wasn't able to do that. And I think it's fine to put him out there. Don't burn one of your better relievers on a game that didn't really look all that winnable, when hopefully you're going to need them this weekend against the Blue Jays.
So, yeah, the Nats headed home for this 5-game homestand, 3 games against Toronto, and then 2 games against the Orioles, with some off days in sight. The Nats with a scheduled off day for this Monday, and then for the following Thursday. Your probable Nats starting pitchers for this weekend: Game 1 Friday evening, 6:45, Patrick Corbin. Game 2 Saturday afternoon, 4:05, Jake Irvin. Game 3 Sunday afternoon, 1:35, Mackenzie Gore. We hit on this on a recent installment of the show. But do you think Victor Robles might be activated at some point during this homestand?
Yeah, I could see it. He's played several games on rehab, ran out a triple the other night, so that's a good sign. And you're looking for any help you can get right now. And not to say that Victor Robles is the savior of the lineup, but having him back would allow you to do some other things. Maybe Jacob Young could play right field, and now you're not playing Rosario or Alex Call to the same extent. So that might be a move we could see happen. He's the only one that's really on the verge of coming back. I don't see Gallo or Thomas coming back soon. And as far as the big name, I thought initially maybe there was a chance we'd see him by now. I don't necessarily get the sense that that's in the works, and I would like to believe that if the Nats are going to make that move and call up one of their top prospects, they would want to hype that up a little bit and not just spring it on everyone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon before a 6:45 game. So, barring something unexpected here, I guess we're not going to see James Wood quite yet.
Well, I would say a few things. Number one, and you hit on this earlier, but that the Nats are struggling offensively right now should have no bearing on them calling up James Wood. You call him up when you think that he's ready to be called up. What Eddie Rosario and company are doing right now should have zero impact on what you do with James Wood. We did have this that came out on Thursday. So, Baseball America's latest ranking of the top 100 prospects in baseball came out on Thursday. James Wood has surpassed Dylan Cruz as the Nats' top prospect. James Wood now the number 5 prospect in all of baseball for Baseball America. Dylan Cruz at number 7 and Brady House at number 50. We have not talked a ton about Cruz. I think it's healthy to kind of let these things breathe instead of getting hyper focused on every little thing that happens with these prospects. We know that Cruz had been dealing with a hamstring. His overall numbers for Harrisburg this season are not particularly good, although he did have a big triple on Thursday. But as we are recording this, Dylan Cruz for this season for AA Harrisburg has an OPS of just 663. But it's interesting thinking about all of this because playing for the Rangers at the major league level and since the start of this regular season has been Wyatt Langford. The Nats took Dylan Cruz out of LSU with the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 MLB draft. The Rangers took Wyatt Langford, an outfielder out of Florida, with the number 4 overall pick in the 2023 MLB draft. Langford is a few months older than Cruz, but not by much. Each guy was a stud college outfielder. Cruz is at AA. Langford is already playing in the majors. Now, Langford's numbers are not particularly good. Langford, for the regular season, has an OPS of 603. So, there are all kinds of ways to cut the cookie, and there is no tried and true way. We a few weeks ago talked about Jackson Holliday with the Orioles. After that conversation, the Orioles demoted Jackson Holliday, sent him back down to AAA Norfolk. So, I'm as anxious to see James Wood as the next person, but, calling him up is not going to be a cure-all, at least we don't think. And there's no guarantee that if you do call him up, he's going to do well. These guys get humbled at the major league level. We've seen it with Holliday. We're seeing it with Langford. Cruz is not off to the start that you maybe would have anticipated. So who knows what would happen with James Wood?
Yeah, look, there's been this, I think, in recent years, this surge of not just prospects, but young prospects bursting through the minor league, getting called up real quick, and in a lot of cases having success right off the bat. And that's great, good for them. But we keep reminding you, that's not the normal way this goes. Most guys do need time in the minor leagues to learn how to hit professional pitching and to do it at each level. There's also always been this talk of, oh, well, once you've mastered AA, you're good. There's no difference between that and the big leagues. And no, there really is a difference. AAA pitching is different. You have seasoned pitchers who've been in the big leagues before, know how to work in that bat a little bit differently than the guys throwing 95 at AA. So I think it's a good cautionary tale and a reminder. Let these guys develop at whatever pace they need to develop at. Doesn't mean they're bust, doesn't mean they're not going to ultimately turn out to be great hitters, but not everyone makes it right away. Not everyone has success right away. And we've heard Mike Rizzo say it over and over again over the years. When you do make those moves and you call up those big name prospects, you want to do it and have that be the one time you have to make that transaction. You don't ever want to call somebody up, have him fail, and send him back down. Not that it can't still work out. It happened to Mike Trout when he first came up. He struggled, sent back down, came back up, and obviously it turned into a Hall of Famer. But ideally, you don't want to do that. And so I think that's why they continue to take the cautious route with this. Make sure that he is as close to big league ready as he could be, and that you're confident he's going to have success. And I agree. I mean, I don't think you put a guy up here to say, okay, go save the season for us. Go turn this lineup that is struggling to score runs into a juggernaut. That's not fair to any of them to put that kind of weight on them. It's also why, as much as fans get frustrated at times, Davey Martinez often will hit these guys at the bottom of the lineup to get started. Give them a chance in a little lower pressure environment and then earn your way up the lineup. So whenever it does happen, I would expect it to be something along those lines and let it develop at the right pace, at their own pace. It's not worth it to force that issue. Even if the team is starting to play well, even if they're saying, oh man, a couple more wins, they could be in a wild card race. I don't think you can let that disrupt what you're trying to do in the larger picture.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's becoming increasingly clear is that this presumption that a lot of people had, I think both of us had, that we were going to be seeing Dylan Crews and James Wood at the major league level sooner rather than later. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, the Nats have had ample opportunity to call up Wood this season with all these injuries to outfielders, haven't done so. I think we will see Wood at the major league level at some point this season, but when is hard to say. And Crews, look, I don't think it's a given anymore that we're going to see him at the major league level this season. And I don't like saying that. I really wanted to see him at the major league level. I don't think that it was outlandish to expect to see him at the major league level this season, given what he was in college, you know, his maturation as a person and as a player. And so, hey, why not the year after his draft year, he makes his major league debut? But with the issues that he's had at Double-A, I don't think we should just assume that we're going to see him at the major league level this season.
No, I don't think you assume it, but I still think they would like for that to be the case. And I don't think that his struggles here are necessarily a sign that he's, not going to make it or not be the kind of hitter that they, always expected him to be. He did very well at the various levels of Single-A last year after he was drafted and signed. It was a long year. He struggled at the end of Double-A. Like I said, there is a difference actually at each of these levels. And so he is facing the kind of pitching that he never had to face before. But everything I know about him does suggest that he's going to figure this out, that between the talent, the work ethic, the smarts, all of those kind of things, that it is going to come together and it's going to click for him at some point. And I think that once it does, they move him up another level and hopefully he advances through and we actually see him sometime this summer or late in the season. But if it doesn't, it's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that this guy isn't going to end up being the player that everybody believed he would be.
I mean, he's at Double-A now, and he's been up and down. So he's got to first do well at Double-A, then they would promote him to Triple-A, and then he'd have to do well at Triple-A. So I just wonder, like, what's the earliest you think realistically we would see Crews at the majors this season? Like September? I mean, do you think we would see him before September at this point?
It's possible. He'd have to get really hot. If he took off and had a great May at Double-A, you could see them maybe saying, okay, by some point in June, you move him up another level to Triple-A, and then maybe a couple months there is all it would take. And, maybe by the end of July or early August, we could see him. September makes a little more sense at this point, but again, a lot can change pretty quickly. Let's see how he handles all this. You want to see some sustained success, I think, before you really start talking about these things, and he hasn't had that yet. But I still think organizationally, they'd like to get to a point that they're, that they can say they end the year with James Wood and Dylan Crews at least in the lineup, if not even Brady House as well.
This episode of the Nats Chat Podcast brought to us by Table 2 Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Maybe some of these Nats hitters need to be engaging with Table 2 Mat. Table 2 Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table 2 Mat directly through the website table2mat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can also call Table 2 Mat 240-388-2206. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can check us out on YouTube. Just search Nats Chat. Our YouTube handle is at Nats Chat Podcast. We have a website that you can check out as well, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.